Halt mich not. Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night. This is Antisocial Horror Show. Today we've got a very cool guest. He is young and wild and kind of mild. Uh, he has done a film called Cruelty, which I saw this morning because that's what you want to do right after breakfast is see horror films. Mr. Sam Das. Is it pronounced Das or Das?
Yeah,
Das,
Das.
like in
Yeah.
Ram Dass, Sam Das. Got
Yeah,
it. Very cool.
exactly.
So tell me a little bit about you. You actually went to school at USC for your master's?
Yeah.
You studied with my brother-in-law.
Okay. Yeah, I did something I think that's kind of odd. I don't know very many people that have done it. I actually doubled down on film school. So I did NYU undergrad film school in New
Nice.
York. Totally loved it. I actually grew up in the Bronx, and went to public school.
Mets or Yankees?
So Yankees. I lived I lived in the Bronx, and literally, Yankee Stadium was kind of our neighborhood,
Yeah,
I guess, in a
you
way.
have no choice.
Yeah, it was unavoidable, you know. Yeah, when I was really little, so my parents are from India, and I actually had a Mets hat, which, my parents, they just bought like a blue hat with orange NY on it.
Uh,
And the kids in my neighborhood quickly let me know that that was not okay. So yeah, I mean, in as far as yeah, I could be said to be rooting for a team. It was the Yankees, I guess, when I was a kid. But
well, I'll
uh,
still talk to you anyway, as a Red Sox diehard. That's okay.
Um, but yeah, I grew up in the Bronx, kind of went to public school, and New York City public school is a little bit of a bubble, like I remember growing up in the Bronx, and I would see stuff like just like The Simpsons, right? And that vision of sort of like yellow school bus pulls up to this big kind of beautiful building and all that, and I would see, I don't know, like Saved by the Bell or whatever, and there'd be like a football team and cheerleaders. I thought that was all just like sort of Hollywood fabrication
Yeah,
because we didn't really have
not real.
our
Yeah.
yeah, our school didn't have a football team. We didn't have cheerleaders. Yeah, going to NYU was definitely a little bit of a culture shock because there weren't a lot of public school kids there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was wonderful. I got exposure to filmmakers that, kind of just changed my life, I guess, in a way. And that sounds like
You have
exaggeration,
like
maybe,
John
but
Canemaker there. Who else was there? There's like
yeah, John
because
Canemaker was
he was a
there.
fan of his.
Yeah. Who else was there when I was an undergrad? I remember, I guess Peter Ray was there, Laszlo Santha. These guys, really helped kind of shape me, I guess, as an
Oh, the
artist.
rock stars, sure.
Yeah. And probably maybe for me, one of the most remarkable experiences I had at NYU is that I had a directing professor named Boris Fruman, who's actually a really great filmmaker. Some of his films, I know at least one has played at Sundance, and this was probably late 90s, early 2000s, that sort of thing. But he was a really tough critic. He would he would give us assignments, basically small little short films that he would shoot, and he would throw them up on the screen, and he would have his remote control, and he would literally kind of fast forward through our work, and a lot of times as he was fast forwarding, he would kind of say, garbage, garbage, garbage. And then he would stop and he would say, well, but this is pretty good, and then he would explain to you why it was good. And I think for a lot of us who were in film school at the time, it was definitely a little bit of a sort of a shock because we were used to, maybe being coddled a little bit
That's
as
a,
artists
that's
and
a good film. Let's put a little bit
yeah,
more.
yeah. Oh my God, great job, and here was a guy who was just kind of telling us like, you're not trying hard enough. Like you need to, study the greats and understand what they're doing. And then, even if you're making like a sex comedy, there's probably something that, Antonio.
Pain will teach you something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or Bergman or so, like
Yeah.
that those were the
We had
people he
Sandy
would.
McKendrick at CalArts. He was
Oh yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I have his book, or am
You
I?
should. If anybody in film school probably has Sandy McKendrick.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But he was
yeah.
one of those guys. He was like,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, for whatever reason, I've always really responded to like when people tell me something is good, it's sort of just like, okay, great, but when someone's like, hey, this kind of sucks and this is why, that's what I find really instructive, because then
honesty helps you change things. Whereas somebody just
yeah.
peppering your steak isn't going to help you change things. They're just going to like, okay, that's nice. That's pepper steak. Great.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I graduated NYU. I worked in New York for a little bit. I was actually a promos editor at MTV.
I saw
Uh,
that. I also
yeah,
started at MTV. That's funny.
yeah. So it was it was a cool job. I worked in Times Square, excuse me, and
That's a
yeah,
film in itself. Just like
yeah, yeah.
walking through Times Square is a whole movie every day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I made some weird friends that just kind of lived in Times Square. And yeah, I was cutting promos for stuff. I think the one show that I guess I cut promos the most for was something called Lingerie Football League. I don't know if that still exists. The producers just kind of handed us our assignment. We didn't really get to pick and
Yeah, you
choose.
never get to. Here's your assignment sheet. Here's your call date. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I did get to do a couple of Jersey Shore and Teen Mom, I guess. Teen Mom and Teen Wolf, I guess, were the two big
My
or bigger shows at the time. But yeah, yeah. And then at the end of that, I was starting to kind of feel like I remember I was cutting a promo for Jersey Shore, and there was something about like smush room footage. So the smush room on the Jersey Shore was this kind of like night vision room where the characters, if they got lucky, I guess, out clubbing or whatever, they would bring someone home, and they would go to like the smush room, which is where they would get intimate. And there was some issue, like I actually had just gotten a dog at the time, a puppy, and I would kind of leave him home and go to work, and I was supposed to be back around 6 o'clock. For whatever reason, there was something with, standards and practices or something where the smush room footage was, I don't know, maybe too explicit or needed to be cropped more or needed to be color graded.
yeah.
And the back
A
and
little
forth.
more smushy.
Yeah, yeah. Back and forth for this got us, somewhere where like I ended up coming home that day at like 10, 11 o'clock or something.
Poor puppy.
And my poor little puppy was, I think he had pooped or peed in my tiny apartment.
Aw.
But I feel like it was this kind of moment for me where I was, I kind of flashed back to NYU and watching Fellini and stuff, and then I was like, what am I, like,
This is not the future.
yeah, yeah. And so I started kind of weighing my options, and at the time, grad school to me felt like 3 more years where I would just get to write and direct. And, granted, it came with a little bit of a steep price
And
tag.
you went to US University of Spoiled Children, so
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I applied to AFI and USC,
good
and
places.
yeah, ended up going to USC for 3 years. And, I have no regrets because I really did get to just spend another 3 years just sort of relentlessly writing and directing short films, and had
The
some,
people that
again,
you meet at USC,
yeah,
mean, a lot of them are already, pre-groomed into the program because of their
yeah,
parentage.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure you tapped
Yeah.
into some of that.
Yeah, no, I met some really kind of famous Nepo kids and some really great people. And some of that there was an overlap. Some of the great people were actually Nepo kids. But anyway, yeah, it was a great program. Again, I was, sort of really lucky that I got some really great professors there too. There was a guy named Bruce Block who
Mhm.
was, kind of life changing for me. Like I felt like Neo at the end of the Matrix, where after I took his class, I kind of felt like when I watched a movie, I was seeing like the green,
Yeah,
floaty,
you've got the code.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I also had a really amazing professor named Pablo Frasconi who he had studied under Stanley Brackage and some of
Yes,
these really
yeah, yeah. I heard
um
that. I've actually chatted with him before. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's actually that's really awesome. Yeah, he had studied experimental film and
Maya Darren was thrown at you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so yeah, it was really, again, I always really love these eye-opening. Like anytime I feel like I've come across something that like I feel like I have a pretty voracious appetite for finding weird movies and I'll tend to kind of get into like for a while it was like only watching sort of Italian giallo films and then for another time, I had like a Russian filmmaker kick, and I tend
Yeah,
to
you go through
go
your
really
little flavors of this and flavors of that.
yeah,
Test those candies. So
exactly. And even kind of despite all that, when I meet, someone who's like, hey, but like you don't really or you haven't seen this entire body of experimental films or whatever, I just think that's I don't know, I think it's kind of a blessing, right? That like you get to get exposure to these kind of incredible artists that, maybe probably never would have seen any of Brackage's stuff, so uh
I still believe I still have my notes for my classes of record.
yeah, same,
So,
same. Yeah.
yeah, I was like,
It's funny. My wife and I will periodically go into our garage and try to, extricate, get rid of things, and inevitably we'll come across my, film school notes and probably even like some stuff from high school.
wow.
And it's always on the chopping block, but then at the last minute, I'm like, no, 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 I need it.
There's
I'm
gonna be some gold in there.
yeah, yeah, exactly. One day I'm gonna be, I'm gonna have the worst writer's block in the world, and maybe I open this notebook and flip to some page, and the cure will be hidden in plain sight.
I
So
am many years older than you. I have an army trunk full of 8 millimeters from when I went to
that's
high
amazing.
school and undergrad school. So I think 85 was the last pile of stuff that I have that's an 8 millimeter.
Wow, that's
We didn't
amazing.
start working in video until much later, but
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. Did
it's like
you
I still have
did,
it.
did you cut on the Steenbeck and stuff?
Oh, we had the flatbed. I
Yeah.
still have my editing suite for my 8, but
Wow.
we had the big 35 millimeter and the 16 millimeter flatbed,
Mm,
so I would just live
yeah,
on
yeah,
it. We were
yeah.
watching films in the library on that flatbed with the reel. Just
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I'm fairly certain of this. I think I my batch or my cohort at NYU was the final. Like we caught on those same flatbeds that like Scorsese and Spike Lee and stuff used, and then right after us, they were just
they're
like, okay,
gone.
all digital now. So
It's like, here's your Sony deck. Good luck.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
now it's all, whatever that software is. They don't even have decks anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because it used to be Avid, right? I think that
Yeah,
was the
Avid.
main
Yeah,
thing.
everybody had Avid or Grass Valley switcher systems, one or the other.
Yeah, yeah. And now it's like Premiere and whatever, whatever
Final
else.
Cut, or I
Yeah.
use Sony Vegas, yeah, or
Or I
DaVinci.
guess, I guess kids these days they just cut it on their phone or whatever. I'm like,
These kids.
yeah, toddlers probably gonna be editing
Your
videos.
child will be one of the kids that does it with an Air computer.
Yeah, 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 like Minority Report or
Yeah,
something.
got it like glued in the eyeball. Okay,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
so bizarre, but it's I miss the smell of film. Film is like,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
going into the sound booth with a Nagra reel, uh
Yeah, 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 yeah.
For those who didn't
Yeah.
know, we're talking about old time stuff. The
Yeah.
having the reel to reel with the little Nagra system.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I still have some Nagra tapes turned for my first
Yeah.
films. So
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I'm fairly certain that somewhere in my parents' house in New York, there is a whole bunch of those Nagra tapes as well. And I refuse to part with it. Someday the Criterion collection will pay good money to
I
I'm just
have those. Absolutely.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
keep being told by,
yeah.
people who are taking my 3/4 inch videos to transcribe them to electronic encloud them. Uh, yeah, you got to watch around for that film stuff because, it just shakes off the plastic after a while.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
wouldn't,
yeah.
I
I
don't want to
know.
know.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to open the box. I still have,
Yeah.
I have family that worked with Max Fleisch's family.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
like Seamus Culhane,
Yeah.
so they're afraid to open boxes, and it's like we know because you've got Betty
Yeah.
Boots in there from
Yeah.
we're not gonna
Yeah. Yeah.
touch
Yeah.
them. So,
Yeah. Is it I don't know if this is accurate, but are you supposed to refrigerate? Is that
you're supposed
accurate?
to refrigerate your film.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of rolls of Super 16 in my parents' fridge for a long time, and then at some point they're like, "Yeah, by the way, you didn't need that stuff, did you?" And I was like, "I guess not."
And
For
it's
what
my
it's worth.
husband and his comic books. It's like
Yeah,
keep those
yeah,
boxes
yeah,
of comic books to.
yeah,
Oh, it was his
yeah.
retirement plan.
Yeah, I actually just like last month rescued a couple of shoe boxes full of early to mid 90s comic books from my parents' house.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what my husband's getting ready to go do. His dad's 96 now, so he's like, I gotta get over to the house before my dad
Yeah.
decides I want to throw
Throws
this
everything
away.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, when you were a little kid, did you make little movies with your, Fisher Price set or what?
I did, yeah. So my dad got a full scholarship in India to, one of their very prestigious kind of film schools.
Yes, who is your dad?
Sorry?
Another filmmaker came up with a similar name.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
guys related or no?
So, I think at some point, filmmaking was kind of an aspiration or a dream of his. It's unclear to me based on stories that change over time, like how pressing a need it was. But when he was very young, I think when he was like 12, my grandfather, so his dad, passed away of kind of a aggressive cancer.
Oh,
And his dad made him promise that he would become a doctor. And so, for better or for worse, he took that really seriously. And I don't know why he applied to the film school, but he did. And even though he got in, he turned it down and became a doctor. But when I was a kid, growing up in the Bronx, he was one of he bought like the giant VHS camcorder when it first came
oh,
out.
nice. Yeah.
And yeah, and so he and I would make these little movies that he would sort of script, and I would mostly act in, but sometimes do other stuff. And he would do these really elaborate credit sequences and stuff. And as I got older and less likely to break things, which is funny because at the time it was so frustrating, but now that I have a toddler of my own, I totally get it because
It's like this
um
is what he was doing. Got it.
yeah. He would kind of trust me to use the camera more and more. And so yeah, I would grab friends. And for me, I would say, one of the really magical things was very early on, my dad and I, we got around to, bootlegging VHS tapes, right? So we would go, yeah, we would go. My dad loved these, Bollywood movies. We would go to these
They're
Indian,
amazing. They're so
yeah, yeah, absolutely amazing, and we would go to these like local kind of Indian grocery stores, and they would have these bootleg VHS tapes that they had copied off of some original, right? So then we would bring those home, and I had my dad's VHS camcorder and our VCR, and I would hook those up,
You
and
shared with two friends.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And well, one of the funny things that I guess I got around to doing pretty early on is that, I would shoot these little things with my friends in the backyard, right? So mostly involving fights or violence of some kind, but then I would edit in like an explosion from like a Bollywood movie, so I thought that was so cool, like I would have my friend shoot like a bow and arrow in the backyard, and then I would cut to a scene from a movie where like a car explodes, and then I would show it to them, and I'd be like, "Look, isn't it cool? Like the arrow you shot blew up that car." So yeah, I was, as much as I guess I could, with the limited, you'd be surprised how little enthusiasm, or at least my friends had for standing around doing, videos. I think it's probably gotten better now because like they can see
Everybody's
right
Instagramming and
away. Yeah,
TikToking
yeah.
in.
But you back in the, 90s when it was all VHS, and you had to be like, trust me, this is gonna be awesome. In 2 weeks, I'm gonna show you, so yeah, I guess at the
Well,
time.
somebody's walking around with a guitar going, "Have you heard of Nirvana?"
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I did mess around as much as I could with that. And but I think really more than anything, like movies, it was like a way to bond with my dad, I guess. We kind of had this weekly ritual of we would go to the Indian grocery store and pick out, a movie that sounded really awesome.
They
And
always have great titles.
yeah, 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 yeah. Like
Hollywood ones, I mean, it's like, grandmother came to my house and shot my face. What?
yeah, yeah, and it's a
Food.
musical.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that was, I don't know, that there was something really, I think, amazing to me about that too, because like by the time I was in high school, I was watching at the time, it was like Fight Club and American Beauty, and I
Yeah,
guess
very good years to go to high school when those films were coming out.
yeah, 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 yeah. And I was lucky again in that like I had some good teachers and friends in high school who like helped me, find really great movies and kind of gain exposure to some of the, really great artists that were working at the time. I remember seeing Happiness, which I want to say was is it
I'm
I
trying
want
to
to say
remember. I
Todd
don't remember.
Solondz or Todd I want to say that, but I do remember the movie very well, and so I was watching that, and then at the same time, watching these kind of Bollywood musicals, which to be fair, they were also going through a period of change and becoming, I think, more ambitious and sophisticated.
Because the audiences for them were getting larger and larger as well.
Yeah, yeah, that and I think, there was kind of this big realization on the part of the filmmakers there that there was this huge kind of diaspora audience in the UK and the US
Yeah, it was
that
kind of the way the Hong Kong movies started to, just explode in the early 70s.
yeah, yeah, and they were like, oh, these people with disposable income in the UK and America will pay to watch these movies in theaters.
Yeah.
So they all of a sudden now had, I think, a better ability to kind of go for a more, a patient audience, or like a more, I don't want to say sophisticated. I think that's not the right word here, but I think they were better able to take risks where, they didn't have to kind of make sure that the movie played for the
Yeah, the audience isn't as judgmental as they had been in the past.
exactly. There
Yeah.
you go. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, the
Uh,
prejudices were kind of wasting away, which is good.
Yeah, they didn't feel the same pressure to be, commercially viable, I think. I think they were able to say, we can try to make a smarter, more, kind of meaningful movie without kind of risking financial ruin, which I
Or
guess,
losing your cultural background in there either. I mean, Slumdog Millionaire.
yeah, 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 yeah. That
Come on.
was, uh,
It's like both
yeah,
culturally hugely important and as a film, hugely important. So,
yeah, yeah. And I remember seeing that in, I saw it during its festival run actually, because I was at NYU at the time, and the guy who did the score for that was this really iconic, Bollywood movie kind of music. He's a composer and a musician and a singer.
mhm.
And I had grown up, I remember hearing his first album in 1992 from a movie called Bombay. And, I literally remember sitting in a dark room in the Bronx as a 7-year-old listening to one of the songs from that album and just kind of really being blown away and going like, holy shit, this is something really different and really beautiful and really, this really kind of transcends like the stuff that you usually get, it's
Yeah.
like it's one of those rare kind of works of art where you really stand up and go, even as a kid, there's something really kind of different and amazing about this. And to hear that same guy now, in an American theater during Slumdog Millionaire and seeing, a much more diverse audience of American people and, just anyone who goes to theater in New York City kind of listening to that same music, I thought was kind of a really magical experience. And that's been a little bit of this kind of holy grail that I've been chasing, which is to, kind of incorporate elements of my, upbringing that are really, I think, integral to who I am and how I see the world and try to, uh kind of incorporate them into my work in a way that's hopefully not alienating to a general audience, but
Well, and
like,
there's people
yeah,
that know who Ganesh is, there's people who know who Shambhala
yeah,
is, there's people who,
yeah,
people who
it,
understand, mythos and the
yeah,
gods of different cultures, which I think it hasn't, I think Joseph Campbell helped bring a lot of that around too. You know,
yeah, yeah,
there's more to the world than just, their little, happy crucifixes and,
yeah,
little starry things. I don't do any of those things, but I love them all. I think they're all
yeah.
interesting. They're all great books.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, yeah, the Hero with a Thousand Faces was for a long time, one of my like prized possessions. One of the great books in my opinion. I think especially if you're like just trying to be a writer or just sort of understand like story and why we bother telling each other stories and that sort of thing.
yeah,
So
why oral history was so much
yeah.
important. Why filmmakers are basically oral historians again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Storytelling is the second oldest profession.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or
exactly.
actually, when you think about it, maybe the first and then the second profession.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, because I think in the oldest profession, they're still kind of they're
Yeah,
selling you the
yeah,
story, right? They're
yeah.
telling you, they're
They're doing
giving
their
you the
demos.
narrative. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're
They're
allowing you
cutting,
to be part of a narrative that yeah.
they're cutting the verticals out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. I did know that I'm not going to talk too much about your film. I'm going to let you do that because
Sure.
I'm not going to be blamed for spoilers. But I did notice there was a specific shot or two that did show a character that seemed very culturally fascinating. Was it the Shamra character?
I mean, if I'm, is it okay if I do
You do
light
you.
light spoilers? Okay.
It's your film. I'm not going to do anything.
Well, when I was a kid, my my dad and I had this ritual of picking out these VHS tapes every week, and we brought one home one weekend, and I guess for whatever reason, my dad started watching it or was just like looking at it beforehand. And he goes to me like, "You can't watch this, you can't watch this one. This one's not for kids." And so naturally, the minute, that tape was unsupervised, I popped it into the VHS and I'm sorry, the VCR.
Yeah.
And it was actually, at the time, I mean, I've seen it now as an adult and it's not quite as scary, but at the time, an extremely terrifying movie about the goddess Kali, who is a Hindu goddess who, is a force for good, but the way that she sort of fights for good, I guess, is very gruesome, and she kind of mirrors the cruelty of the evil around her, but kind of reverses it to for a good end. So I always thought that was really interesting. I grew up really immersed in Indian mythology,
Mhm.
and even when I like as an adult now, I'm not religious or particularly spiritual even necessarily, but I
My God is Doctor Who.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I will say that a lot of those stories, even if you strip all the kind of theology out of it, there's something interesting about the worldview, and one thing that I've always appreciated is that it is very gray. Like it's not always like very black and white. It's not always just like this guy is good and this person is evil and this is the clear right answer, and this
People
is
are
the
nuanced. Your cultural icons are nuanced. Everything's
yeah,
nuanced. Otherwise, if it's all black and white, then we'd all have it figured out, bazillion years ago.
exactly, and so Kali, I think, is one of those figures that is really kind of interesting to me because a lot of her stories will involve some type of transgression. Usually it's a male transgressor who is somehow antagonizing or victimizing women in some way.
Mm.
And but when it gets down to their punishment, though, a lot of times the punishment is so gruesome that you kind of end up asking yourself this second question of like, okay, yeah, the guy was a jerk and what he was doing was really awful, but like, do I really feel satisfied that he's eviscerated or that
Yeah, he's a toasted marshmallow now.
yeah, 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 exactly.
And
And so I always
the
thought that was
woman you have in the film, I mean, stunningly gorgeous human being. I don't know how you found her, Isis, even named after
yeah,
a goddess.
yeah.
You know,
That was just a stroke of again really great fortune. I had worked with some really great casting directors, and originally going into casting, my original kind of vision was for a South Asian actress to play the lead role. And then we started, kind of watching auditions and things like that, and when I saw ISIS's reel, it was some footage from a show that she was on Amazon Prime called With Love, which was kind of like a rom-com show. And she plays a doctor who is trans and is looking for love, and all the kind of unique challenges of that situation. And on that show, she's so charming and so warm and so funny. And then I saw footage from an HBO Max miniseries that she was on called When They See Us, which is
right,
kind
which
of,
I've
kind
seen.
of a big deal, I
Yeah,
guess, the Central Park 5
yeah.
story. And on that, she was just, there was this one argument scene with her mom where, you're just completely captivated by her, simultaneous kind of rage and sadness, and the by the time I had seen like those two or three clips, I was like, it was hard for me to now imagine anyone else doing the role as
That's
well as I
cool.
thought she could.
Right.
And so I called the casting directors and I was like, oh my God, I really hope she actually wants to do it and would be interested in doing it. So, they kind of put me on a Zoom call with her. And the whole time I was like, oh my God, I really hope she wants to do it. I really hope she's into it. And got super lucky. She loved the material. And, she, like you said, was named after a goddess. And, she thought that was a great coincidence and something she'd love to explore. And One of the things she said was that she just wanted so badly to sort of have some fun on screen in a way where, like she gets to do some stunts and,
And the
maybe
whole film's nothing but a twist. The whole film is a twist.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, it was one of those things where having seen her previous work, I thought she would do a great job. And then every time we got on set together, she would just blow me away and just kind of take it to this
Ex-
next level. The very first thing we shot, and I'm going to try really hard here not to do spoilers, but the first thing we shot with Isis was with her in, she had just sat for 3 hours of prosthetics, and it's actually like a super, super far wide shot, right? So because we had a super low budget, one of the rules my DP and I came up with really early on is like, we will not be seduced by how good things look in the moment. So like, even though, our special effects makeup artist did an incredible job. We
Amazing
would see the
job.
results, and yeah, we would be like, "Oh my God, can we just shoot nothing but close-ups of this?" We're like, "No, no, no, really stay at a distance. Like, let the audience kind of,
Hunger
fill in
for
the
it. Yeah,
detail."
fill
Yeah,
it up. Yeah.
and
I do effects animation now, so it's still to my days like
yeah,
I just want to
yeah.
just tease them enough to make them go,
E-
what
e-
was
Exactly,
that? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And even in the edit, like, it's funny. I remember the first edit that we finished. I started showing it to some close friends of mine, and they were like, "Well, we never really get like a good look at her, like even when we are up close, it's only for like, less than a minute here,
Yeah.
less than a minute there." And I was like, oh, as as tempting as it is to be like, "Oh, look how amazing, our SFX team did on this practical stuff." I think it was the right choice to hold back and not really give in to that temptation. But we were shooting this super wide shot of Isis, and the script just called for her to just kind of stand there, like the idea is like the guy's seeing something, like is there something there? Is there not something there? So Isis walks on set, we call action, and she's like writhing in this bizarre, stuff that's not in the script at all. We were shooting in this junkyard at like, I don't know, 2 a.m. or something. Pretty, you know, uh
What? You didn't build that set yourself? Yeah.
yeah, it was like in the middle of the desert in Lancaster,
I was
California.
wondering if it was Palmdale or Lancaster. That's funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Reputation
Really
from film school.
really, really creepy place. And, we like, even though the location was huge, our crew was actually pretty small.
Mhm.
And it was fucking terrifying. ISIS was like genuinely like the first time we called action and she started doing her thing, like I got chills in the best possible way because I was like, A, not only is this better than what I imagined, but B, like it's just fucking scary. Like if I didn't know what was going on here and I saw this woman standing there doing this at this time of night, I would be pretty fucking scared. And I think that's a good place to be, I guess, when you're making a horror movie. So,
That's
um,
oh, that's
yeah.
fun. And this is not going to be your last horror, I'm guessing.
No, no, I'm actually super excited. I just locked a script, how was it, like last week? So I'm working on another mythology inspired horror film. There is this really interesting myth in this kind of larger kind of epic, sort of like an Indian equivalent of like the Iliad or the Odyssey,
Uh-huh.
but contained within that work, which is called the Mahabharata, there is this
Familiar with
one
that?
there's this one myth about these kind of cannibal occultists who, you know, feed unsuspecting victims the meat of people that they have killed in order to do these kind of elaborate occult rituals. And yeah, that's kind of the the basis for this.
Just a family movie for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I've built a, I think, unlikely kind of love story around this about these cannibal occultists. And I'm so excited to get started on it. And one of the things that I find very exciting is that it all takes place inside, and so we won't be running around 20-degree junkyards at 2 a.m. and as
The
much fun as
graveyard
that.
of the planes behind you in the background.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. As I that was a really unique and kind of amazing experience, but it's got its own bizarre challenges. Those junkyards were, they were intense locations.
No, the
Everyone
set
was,
themselves are characters.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And, everyone was scared of touching some rusty metal somewhere or falling in a
There's a body in the trunk. What? Okay.
So the night before we started shooting, we actually had one of the owners of the junkyard just kind of move some vehicles around, and these vehicles had not been moved in years, and there was no light or running water at any of these junkyards. So before all of our movie lights arrived, we were just using those
The
like
GoPro lights and the stuff. Yeah.
little lights that you strap onto your head, and I was walking around talking to someone, night before the shoot. There's like a million people to talk to and million details to square off. And I actually ended up falling into a giant hole in the ground because a truck had moved that was covering that hole. And I was, on the phone, not looking, and the hole was like pretty, sizable. So I ended up getting a hairline fracture on my ankle the night. This was at 7 p.m. and I think we started shooting the next day at like 5 p.m.
Oh,
So one of the PAs was very kind and drove me to a nearby ER in Lancaster, California.
oh,
We
geez.
got to the ER. The waiting room was packed. There was a guy who looked like he had been, like his face had been slashed open or something. And
Uh,
I was like, this is, if I sit here in this ER, like, that's it. I don't think we're even shooting tomorrow. So I
wow.
just went back to the hotel and went to urgent care or something the next morning. They were like, you got to stay off your feet for at least 2 or 3 weeks. And I was like, I got to shoot a movie. And so, um,
Oh,
yeah, I got this like goofy, like,
the walking thing with the knee.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I could put my knee on
Yep.
the thing and
I did
roll
the same
around.
thing doing a play. I was in the middle of a play and I fell out of
Yeah.
my car. And next thing I know,
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I have no regrets, weirdly. Somehow that was a part of it, and it, I don't know, who knows? Maybe if I had not fallen in the hole, I would have made poorer decisions and movie would not be the wonderful little romp.
the family film it is. The
Mhm.
the funny thing, I cracked myself up because I spent like a lot of time watching scripts. I'm cat first. Sorry, my cat was up in my lap for a minute. And when I watch scripts, I also watch to see what people edit like. And I kept looking, I was like, I wonder who did the editing. I wonder who freaking did the editing. This editing is telling a story. Like the
Yeah,
director's telling
yeah.
a story, the writer's telling a story. I get that they're the same person. I wonder who did the editing. And by the time I read editor Sam Dass, I'm like, wait a minute now. So you're
Yeah,
just all the way around the storyteller. It was great.
Yeah, I love editing. Like I said, since I was a kid, one of the most fun things was at one point I had a stack of three VCRs, right?
Oh, so
And
you're ABC rolling.
yeah, 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 exactly. C was my timeline, and A and B were where I would put my clips,
Oh,
and
your drop-ins. I do your drop-ins.
yeah, exactly. And all through NYU, and then I worked briefly as an editor at PBS in New York, and then at MTV, and I don't know. I just think it's so important, like I have cut movies for, other filmmakers, and I
Well,
I
the
can't,
audio, I think, worked really well because the way it was cut. I think
thanks. Thank you.
absolutely was the
Yeah.
audio was just not going to give spoilers. So work because of
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, no, I just think it's so important. I did some documentary editing work like post NYU, and I think that was another really eye-opening experience because there was a lot of times where there would just be, hours and hours of footage, and I would be sitting there and I'm like, I'm basically, directing this movie right
That's
now
it.
because like I'm picking and choosing the story that's kind of being told. And my I get, for better or for worse, I was up at, I like I said, I have a toddler. So I was cutting this
You're up
movie.
at data clock.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I was cutting this movie when she was about a year old, right? So the best time of day to cut this was 3 a.m.
Oh,
So it would just be everyone in the house is sleeping. It's just me and Avid. And yeah, I don't know, there's this one scene where both characters are kind of wrapping around this pickup truck.
mhm.
And I've
That was
met
kind of the
people.
scene I was thinking of earlier, but yeah.
And I think that one scene I must have spent at least 7 to 10 days. Like I would cut it and then I'd show it to my wife, and she would kind of give me some notes and then I would cut it again and I just kept doing it. And sometimes you feel like you're kind of going down this rabbit hole where you're like, why are there 75 different versions of this one?
Yeah. Do you
You
have a
know,
45-minute cut? Do you have,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
we worked
And
on the Aristocrats and there was originally a 15-hour cut. So
oh yeah,
totally,
I
totally.
love that movie, by the way. It's
I
weird.
know
I
it.
was
Yeah.
just thinking about that
Oh, that's
recently.
funny. Aristocrat.
Uh, yeah, Gilbert
Gilbert
Gottfried.
Gottfried, yeah.
Yeah,
And his wife Dara, I
yeah.
miss him. But yeah, and
Uh,
his daughter Lily was being born around the time of the Aristocrats and
uh,
or was it Max? I don't remember. One of the two kids.
yeah.
But all I could think was it was his first kids, and how he would go up to Gilbert going, change my diaper. Please change my diaper.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, in a weird way, it's like all those discarded cuts and versions somehow lead to that final. And I really sincerely believe that in horror, a matter of frames really makes a difference, again, without getting too spoilery, there's a specific moment in Cruelty where there's something of a jump scare or surprise. And at one point, I will kind of do these things where once I've cut a movie, I'll give myself almost an arbitrary number that's like 2 minutes shorter or a minute shorter or whatever. And
Hmm,
I'll say, look, no matter what, you need to get to
that
2 minutes shorter, right? And so then I'll be very relentless and really try to cut things down. And we had actually, cut this scene shorter, gone and done score and sound mix, whatever. I walked out of the sound mix, everything was finalized except the color grade.
mhm.
And I'm driving home from the sound mixer's house with my wife again, and I'm like, what was up with that scene? Like the first couple of times we showed that to people and we watched it, it was shocking and scary. And somehow today it didn't work. And she was like, "Ah, we've seen it like a million times. So it's probably it's just lost its like shot. We know what's gonna happen." And I couldn't sleep and I was like, what have I done? Like what something's missing. So I was able, thankfully, like I learned to be very organized as an editor. So I was
Mhm.
able to go back to an earlier cut and I realized that so this guy's kind of looking around and then at the end he sees something shocking, right? But what I had done was I had made the looking around stuff so fast that
There was no the fact that he's trying to take stuff in.
Exactly. Like it just almost felt obligatory. Like we were just giving the audience information, but there wasn't much emotion behind it. It's like we were telling the same story, which is a guy thinks he sees something and then he looks for it and then, he doesn't see it or whatever. But we were doing it in this kind of like very like perfunctory, just kind of like, okay, guy sees something, guy looks, guy see.
Yeah.
And we were missing that kind of like, oh shit, is he actually looking like might we actually see the thing that he thinks he sees? And the reason for that was because it was too fast and
Yeah,
we
you took
weren't
away the teasing part. You got to.
yeah, we weren't lingering long enough. So I was like, I don't care, if we have to pay more or whatever, but I'm gonna call, everyone's gonna be upset because
Um,
everyone thought we were picture locked and everyone thought we were sound locked and whatever else. And then I started the apology tour the next morning and I was so
Here's
sorry.
the donut. Here's
Yeah,
another donut.
I screwed this up and I cut this scene too fast, but we've got to go back to the longer version. And again, I don't think it was even I'm if I had to guess, it was probably maybe a second or so of footage, but it makes such a huge difference. Like luckily, I have now since November of last year been lucky enough to see this with live audiences several times and every time I see someone jump or really react to that moment, I'm like, oh, thank God we went back and
Yeah,
yeah, we fixed that
it's a
because
win.
that faster version, I think, maybe half the number of people who react would have reacted that way. So,
I learned from I worked on it. People who've watched this know I've worked on Alien 3. Um,
oh,
but I
sweet. That's
watched David Fincher, and one of the things he said to one of the actors was, if you don't sigh, it's not going to work. And I just remember
yeah,
the actor just went in the background, just not even, he wasn't even the main character in the scene, but he just, and that's all it took to make the scene.
yeah.
Suddenly everybody was riveted. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, David Fincher, definitely one of my heroes. Like, so, I mentioned Fight Club earlier. I saw this in high school,
Uh-huh.
and I remember just first of all, just the first time I watched this, being kind of blown away, and then I started like, this was like the early years of the internet, right? So there would be like forums and things like that. And someone was like, "Oh, if you pause the scenes, then Brad Pitt appears for like a frame or
Yeah, it
two."
says here's this frame, here's that frame. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so then and this was again, I think this was maybe early days of DVD, but if I had to guess, I'm pretty sure we got this on VHS from Blockbuster. That's
Uh-huh.
like old we're talking.
Ah,
And
Blockbuster.
I rewinded it and paused it and was like, "Holy shit, that's Brad Pitt in this scene that I didn't think he was in." And I remember telling my girlfriend at the time, I was like, it's like read a book, like you bought a book from Barnes and Noble and the author, folded a page or, you know what I mean? I thought it was
The,
so cool that
the
he would,
treasure chest.
yeah. It's all like, to me, it felt like this kind of amazing thing where like there's the story that, you think you're being told, but then he's gone and actually messed with like the physical, medium.
That's
Like,
cool.
yeah, so I thought that was so cool, and then his stuff since then has always been really
Jaw
great.
dropping. Just jaw
Yeah,
dropping. Yeah, even the most mundane moments, if you look at it enough, you're like,
yeah,
wait a
yeah,
minute, that's not as mundane as I thought it was."
yeah. Like I really loved The Social Network and even Gone Girl. I thought was really
Yeah.
fantastic and just yeah, really great stuff. Great
Well,
filmmaker.
I'm excited about your film, having its Portland premiere, and
Yeah,
I'm very glad that first of all, getting to meet somebody who's just put so many interesting things in 9 minutes. It's like that is incredibly hard to do, and as somebody who's watched, I've told another filmmaker this. I literally get up in the morning. I get up about 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't have kids, but I have critters.
yeah.
Um,
Hey,
and
I think that counts.
yeah, the breastfeeding's harder,
Yeah,
but you do what you gotta
yeah,
do.
yeah.
What are you gonna do?
I think there are people who take better care of their pets and have better relationships with their pets than some people do with human kids.
Fact.
So
That is a fact, and I'm
yeah,
probably
yeah,
one of those people.
yeah.
But yeah, the whole thing is my whole day starts at 6 a.m. with the watching whatever film I got coming in. So I
Mhm.
gotta watch this, I gotta watch this, I gotta watch this, I gotta watch this, and I just soak it in
Yeah,
and then try to pick up what I learned from this person by watching this one.
yeah.
Even the crappiest stuff I can learn something from.
Yeah.
Not do something.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
When you see something packed in with so much density and so much um like I've said this to almost every director I've talked to so far. There's been a lot of powerful women in this bunch of films for the Portland Horror Film Festival trademark 2025. But it was nice seeing yet another one, and you know I think it was mentioned one time about her being trans, and to me it was like not even a story to be told. It's like she is the story. She's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I think that was one of the things that Isis said she really liked about the role and the film, which is that, she her character wasn't like defined by like it wasn't like only a
I didn't
trans.
even realize that she had been a trans character until I read something, 2 hours after I saw it. It was,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, so she, and I don't want to speak for her, but I'm sort of paraphrasing our early conversation, which was that like, there is a tendency to say, well, ISIS is trans, and so the roles that she has played or gets offered are sometimes it's kind of like, oh well, you're trans, so maybe you're facing discrimination about that, or there's some trauma related to that. And I think one of the things that she said was exciting to her about this was it's like it could have been anyone.
She's a woman in a situation a woman would be in.
Exactly. And she gets to kick some ass,
Yeah,
you
which
know,
I loved.
and have some fun with it. So I think I'm glad. And yeah, when we first wrote the role, like, I just sort of envisioned it as a woman, walking down the street. I actually many, many years ago, I was walking home late at night in New York City. I had gone to Film Forum, which is
Great.
on the west side, kind of tucked away, like what is that? West of Soho, kind of. And weirdly, I'm leaving Film Forum at like midnight, and typically kind of a busy area of Manhattan, but for whatever reason, it was just me and this one woman about like a half a block ahead of me. And we were both walking, east towards it was Sixth Avenue. We're both walking east, but there's no one else around, and this poor woman keeps looking over her shoulder.
You know she had her keys between every finger.
Yeah, yeah. She keeps looking over her shoulder at me, and I'm like, oh man, like she thinks I'm some kind of creep or something. And so I'm trying to appear less threatening. So I like pulled out my phone, and I was a smoker at the time, so I was like, oh, let me just look like I'm minding my own business. But for whatever reason, that seemed to freak her
Uncle
out.
Sam did the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And so at some point, she turns around, looks at me, and then just starts, booking it, just running. And that always just stuck with me. I was like, holy shit,
That's her
like,
life, though. That honestly is
yeah,
life as a woman at night.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know what had happened to her or has happened to her, what she thought might
I,
happen.
yeah.
And it's just one of those things, like just a random, I'd walk around Manhattan all
You
day
could
and
have been
night.
Jimmy Stewart, and she would have given you
Yeah.
the same, like,
Yeah, 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 exactly. But always stuck with me. And so when I wrote the thing, I wrote it in the year that my daughter was born, which was the same year there was the whole Roe v. Wade being, struck down kind of thing. And I wanted to tell a story that my daughter could look at someday, and say, there is a tradition in South Asian storytelling of, strong kind of women, and strong in the sense that, Kali, she wears a skirt made of the arms of men that have used their hands to wrong women. She carries actually the head of a guy that she's killed. So like, I think there's something interesting about that extreme version of
So you're going to be the next Argento, and your child is going to be the next Asia Argento.
Yeah, yeah. Why not? I love Suspiria. I think Suspiria is a. In fact, Suspiria and the Carpenter Halloween were the two movies that I kept bothering my DP and production designer to watch.
See?
When
Now you were doing what your teacher was doing. You have to see
yeah,
this.
yeah, and I would kind of test them on it in subtle ways. And I'm sure they did not appreciate this at all because they're busy professionals with
Yeah, it's like this kid again with the thing.
things to do. Yeah, and I bought them like very nice collector's editions of these movies. And I would call my DP and be like, "Hey, did you catch the commentary track that the DP did on
I did
Halloween?"
that with Thing. I did that with the Thing all the time.
Yeah. And look, I guess I can't confirm for a fact whether they claim to have watched them, and I'll take their word for it.
They
But
passed with me in divorce. Yeah.
yeah, even if just having the colorful box for Suspiria helped in some way, I'm happy with that. And look, I think as a director, all you can really do is try, right?
Yep.
You find the right people, and then you try to feed them the right ideas, and spark something in them, and
Well, I
hopefully.
know you're going to have a huge fan club. And over the years, I suspect we're going to see a lot more really cool things from you.
Thank you so much. That
No,
means a lot.
no. Thank you so much for introducing that film to me. Cruelty is really, really fun for 9 minutes. I'm going to go back and watch it a second time when my husband gets home.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to wrap this up. Is there anything you want to say to the Portland film audience?
I'm really excited to be here. I've never been to Portland before, strangely enough, like
The
it's
food
always,
trucks are fabulous.
yeah, there's a lot of things about Portland that, that I've read and consumed over the years that has always made me feel like this is a place that I would feel completely at home in.
It's a great town.
Yeah, I've been here now 2 hours, and I'm very, very excited to see, what,
The
just
coffee
on.
does not taste like Coca-Cola. I promise you that. We have
Yeah,
perfect
I
coffee
gotta I gotta find something a little more, homemade than this.
and tons of really amazing restaurants that aren't that expensive. And here's
Nice.
like lunch. And you can
Yeah,
always look out over the water and think, I wonder who's in there.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm actually traveling to Stamford, Connecticut tomorrow. So
My foster mom was buried there.
I don't know that I've ever been to Stamford, Connecticut either,
Yeah,
but
too.
yeah. Well, one of the
Going to
really.
Yale, are we? Are we visiting people in Yale?
No, it's for another film
Awesome.
festival. Yeah, I actually did visit Yale quite a bit, but that was New Haven, right? Like I
Yeah.
did.
Stanford, but there's
Yeah,
still, yeah. There's
yeah,
still a Yale connection in Stanford, trust me.
yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm caffeinating because I do want to, I don't want to just sleep during my time in Portland, but I'm really excited. Portland Horror was one of the festivals we really, 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 really wanted to get into because
The
um
Callahans are awesome. Yeah.
yeah. And just early on, like, I would kind of look at the short horror films that really spoke to me, and then I would kind of look at the festivals that they went to, and Portland Horror was kind of always on the list. So exciting, it's kind of great to, kind of come full circle and get to share the same stage that those films played on. So
Awesome. Well, I'm
yeah.
sure you're going to have a kick-ass time tonight and then when you go to your
Yeah.
films. And I know
Yeah.
I don't want to take up any more of your time because you're going to have to run over there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But
and Sam, you've been amazing. And I
thank you so much. Yeah, I had a
thank you.
great time.
And hold on just a sec. And America, I want to thank you for hanging out for the Portland Horror Film Festival Trademark 2025 and the Antisocial Horror show. We have, I think, 5 more episodes and then we're done. And then you guys are going to be watching all these movies. Kick mucho booty. And thank you very much, humans.